So how many of you know what we're going to be talking about today? Yes? You came because of it? How many of you just came because you're groupies and you love us? Okay. Both? Okay. I love that. So last month we talked about the psychology behind making a move, right? And the thought process that goes into that. And the discussions that you need to have with your family. Today, we're going to kind of get down and dirty with logistics. So today, we're going to talk about the actual move itself and some things to consider.
Yeah. And so I have a survey. I'm going to, by a show of hands, real quick, before we get started. Becky and I would like to know, of the people in the room, there are some categories about where you might stand right now as it relates to downsizing. And let me clarify, downsizing means relocating from one residence to another. It doesn't mean cleaning out your attic. That's decluttering. So as it relates to downsizing, how many of you would say, here are the categories, and then I'll go through them one by one. You're either in denial, I'm never moving, you can't make me, or preparing, or actively planning, or you're helping someone else with one of those stages. So how many of you, be honest, are in the denial phase, not doing it, can't make me, never going? Raise your hand. Okay, great. How many of you are in the preparing, preparing? Okay, great. How many of you are actively doing something right now in that process? Okay, a few hands. And then how many of you are helping someone else with one of those phases of the task? Okay, great. And then like Becky said, the people who didn't raise their hand, they're just here because they like us.
Yeah, they like us.
They don't have any answer. Okay. All right. Now, the other question we wanted to ask was, when you think about downsizing, what words come to mind? Now, here's how we're going to do this. When I say what word comes to mind, you're going to just shout out which words come to mind. Now, just short words, not phrases. So 1 or 2 or 3 words at most, but we're just going to shout them out. Ready? When you think about downsizing, what words come to mind? Words. All right, wow, that was good. Okay, I heard overwhelming. I heard daunting. What else did I hear? Say it again.
Work.
Space, stuff, work, headache, stress, decisions. Panic. Wow. Okay. Is there any that haven't been said yet? Anxiety. Were there any positive words? Relief.
I like that.
Life-changing event.
Okay, that was like 5 words, but we'll give you that. 3 words. All right. Anybody else have a positive word? Exciting. Says Shannon over here, who's going to help you do it. Adventurous. Needed. Okay.
How about restyling? That was my favorite word from last month.
That's
restyling.
Right. Yeah, so thanks for bringing that up. So Diane last month, she said when she thinks about this, she doesn't think about it as downsizing, thinks about it as restyling. And so if you think about restyling, does that change the words that come to mind? Yes? Okay, so when I say think of words, shout those out. Think of words related to restyling. Shout those words out. Fun. Change. Expensive.
We'll talk about that.
All right, one more. New things. Yeah, great.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. All right.
Today, I'm so excited about this because I am an action-based person, and I love a list, and I love giving people logistics and really seeing people move through the process. So this is right up my alley.
You like giving people plans.
I do.
Yeah.
I love a plan.
Yeah.
I do love a plan. So today we're going to talk about how we're going to navigate the process more smoothly, like talking about some practicalities and some strategies.
Yeah. Now, I talked to a few people in the room before we came up, right? I think you did too. And there was a little bit of confusion between the decluttering and downsizing. So just to clarify, just to look the words so we're all talking about the same thing. If you're not planning to relocate from your current space, whatever that is, then some of these things may not be the same. So we'll clarify when we get to them. Like, this is for downsizing. These people, maybe if you're decluttering, it may be a different plan.
Yeah.
Right? Because decluttering and downsizing, the plan isn't always the same. Okay? So keep that in mind. And so if you ask a question towards the end when we do Q&A, be sure to clarify, look, here's my plan. Like, I'm not moving. I just have this question about decluttering. We might be able to help with that.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right, cool.
Yeah. I like to say you can't stump me. Shannon doesn't like it when I say that, but I do tell people that.
Yeah, you can't stump us.
Yeah.
If we don't know
will
the
figure
answer,
it out.
I was going to say we make it up.
Oh. I don't make it up.
She'll figure it out and I'll make it up.
Okay.
Some of these people know me, they've been coming a long time. They know that I'm just going to make it up.
Okay, well, I won't make it up, but I will find an answer. So I really am excited to reduce some overwhelm and reduce some stress through this process. So you got the clicker?
Yeah, I got the
Okay,
clicker. Yeah,
all right.
So the girls back there have done a fantastic job of getting us set up, except for I wasn't using the clicker when we started. So
That's okay.
That's us, though, on the screen, just so you know.
When we put on makeup and get
Yeah.
camera ready.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, so we have in true Truth Series fashion, we have 5 truths, and these are on your handout on the front. And then we're going to do some talking points under each truth.
And some pro tips, because I like a pro tip.
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
Very good.
Okay, so myth number 1, moving is moving. All moves are the same.
That's a myth.
That's false.
That is so false. Yeah. So the truth is that later life moves can be more complex and or emotional depending on the specific circumstances. Sometimes our stamina, our recovery time, our physical strength, a lot of circumstances can cause that to be a little bit different. Has anybody found that to be true, that it's harder to move later than it was when you were younger?
I mean, maybe you start out thinking like, oh, I'm going to pack the whole kitchen today.
Yeah.
And that gets sidelined real
Well,
fast.
I have a picture of some people packing. Where is it? There it is. That's what it looked like when we were younger, right? It doesn't look like that anymore. Now, it could look like that, but then what it would look like after that is the chiropractor's office.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so the pro tip that we have on this one is what I have found is that when people have clarified why they're moving, their why in that experience, the experience tends to be a little bit more positive, and keeping your eye on the prize and the eye on the goal is one of the things that will help you move through some of those challenges that you might not be expecting to run into.
Well, it's the first thing you do when you meet with somebody, right? The very first time, you find out what's the point. Why are you doing
Why are we
this?
doing
What's
this?
your reason? What's your why? What's your intention? And if people don't share that with someone, if you don't share that with the person who is helping you, then the goals are wonky, right? So if you brought people in to remodel your house and you told them you want to remodel your house and you didn't tell them the purpose of remodeling your house, then they may misconstrue what it is you're trying to accomplish, and you may end up with something totally different than what you wanted, right? You say, I'm remodeling my house so that I can make it more accessible, so that it would accommodate, a walker if ever needed, or a wheelchair if ever needed. Your remodel is going to look totally different than if you said. So the same is true for a move.
So what are some of the motivations, some of the whys that I've written down for this would be financial reasons, health reasons, maintaining your home, safety. Sometimes safety becomes the motivation.
I added a few as well, and I said, some people, and a few of you said this before I came up, just to simplify, right? It's just to simplify things. It would be nice. And then connection. I wanted to talk a little bit about one of our clients that we helped that moved for connection here in a minute. And peace of mind, right? I think you may have alluded to that one as well. And then a lot of times, frankly, people move to relieve their family members of responsibility for their care, whether current or in the future. So an awful lot of folks have moved to Spanish Cove and to Concordia and to the Legend not because they needed to move right now, but because if ever in the future they weren't able to take care of themselves, they didn't want their kids to have to be finding them a place and dealing with moving them. So they're doing a preemptive.
Yes, and I think also, so preemptive, let's talk about proactive and reactive moves. So what you're talking about is a proactive move. That's somebody who is planning ahead. They want to stay in control of those decisions and make their choices. And then a reactive move would be when that choice having some issues.
It's crisis oriented.
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, a health event, something like that.
You don't get to choose. I think that, for me, some people don't mind. And I think that's a behavioral style and a personality too, right? So we're talking about, the goal today is talk about making moves easier, right? Easier.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to start at the beginning. You know, people want to dive right into, well, how do I hire a mover and how do I get boxes and all these things? But it's like Becky said earlier, if you don't think about what is the goal, what is the intention, then most people, somebody said earlier when we asked you to shout out words, you said it's hard. It was complicated. It was expensive, all the words. Well, what happens is those things outweigh the reason to do it, and so people just don't do it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons right now, you want to hear what it is? It's too hot.
It is too hot.
It's too flipping hot.
It is too hot right now.
Yeah,
but I do think also when you think about a proactive move and a reactive move, the reactive move tends to some of those negative, overwhelming words circulate around that. But when you can come from a proactive point of view, then we get to have some of the adventure and the excitement.
You can make it what you want.
Yes. Yeah.
You aren't in crisis mode. Everything is easier when you're not in crisis mode.
Yes.
No doubt.
Yeah.
100%.
So my call to action, I would say, on our myth number 1 would be to take a moment and think about what your motivation might be and whether you want to make a proactive or a reactive move.
Yeah, 100%. So if you didn't write that down, that's your call to action. Consider what your reason is. You're going to make a proactive or reactive move. I want to point out what Becky said earlier. You know, last month Diane said when she thinks about downsizing, and she has downsized herself, she doesn't think about downsizing, she thinks about it as restyling. And that reframed in her mind what moving meant for her, right? Those of you who are here heard that. And so you get to write the next chapter of your life. And, you know, that can be, in many cases, it can be what you want it to be. Now, some people go, oh, maybe I don't have enough money or whatever. Right? Well, money's part of it, no doubt. You can't have what you can't afford. I mean, I've tried. It doesn't work. You know, but the reality of it is, even if you don't get to have exactly what you want, you make of what you get, what you make of it, right? You make what you get. And I think that's such a big deal.
Okay, so, and I will say, for those of you in the room who want to age in place, you can still, in my opinion, you may disagree with this, but I think you can still make a proactive move if the time comes, if you have a plan B set up. Because none of us are saying, okay, everybody needs to pack up and move, but like have a plan. Because otherwise it will be a reactive move. And so if something happens that you can't follow your plan A, if you have done your homework and your research, which you're all doing, then,
it makes it easy.
Then it won't be necessarily as a reactive negative move.
100%. So that's why we put the stages up here for this, right? So we have this in 2 places. We're going to talk about it here. We're going to talk about it again here in a few minutes on another truth. But on this one, if you remember, we've talked about this, those of you who have been coming for a long time. This isn't new to you. You've seen this many times. But the fact of the matter is that people don't just one day wake up and say, we're moving. Right? They don't. And by the way, your kids don't wake up one day and say, okay, we're going to move mom and dad. That's not the way it works. There are stages of those decisions that are in place, right? Regardless of who that is. So one of them is what we call pre-contemplation. It's not just denial. Denial, I kind of made fun of it earlier. Denial really is when someone says, I'm not doing it, I'll never have to do it, it won't happen to me. That's denial. Pre-contemplation, on the other hand, is I just haven't thought about it yet. It's not been on my radar, right? It's not been something I've been thinking about. And that's okay. And so today, you may be saying to yourself, well, I'm thinking about it. Okay, well, that puts you in the next stage, right? The yellow box. And by the way, some people are in thinking stage for years, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But then they move into planning stage. And I would contend that some of you that are here are in planning, and some of you are in thinking, and then some of you are in action. You raised your hand earlier.
And spouses might be in different places too.
Oh, yeah. Spouses are firmly in denial, and one is in action. Right? Like, and sometimes one's in pre-contemplation, haven't even thought about it, and the wife or husband walks in and says, hey, I'm planning. I'm going to go to this seminar. And they go, oh, well, what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those people have to get on the same
page.
Right?
Yep.
But just remember, we're going to be talking through these stages and referring back to these because not everybody's in the same place. So the action step or the call to action for you might look different than the next person next to you based on where you are in this process. Okay? All right. Are you ready to go to myth number 2?
Myth number 2.
All right. Let's do it.
Okay, I did it before. I can do it again. Is that true? No?
Maybe not exactly the same way.
Yeah.
Right? So I told Becky I have to tell this story because it's so appropriate for this particular myth. So the truth is, as we get older and we're in different stages of our life, we often need more support, not less. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that people have a misconception of the word independent. I wrote a blog post years ago. It was called Interdependence Day instead of Independence Day because nobody's independent. Let's be honest. I don't know, most of you, maybe 1 or 2 of you did, but I don't think most of you made your own clothes. And I'm pretty sure none of you built your own car or fix your own car anymore. There's a lot of things I don't do, right? We just don't. We are interdependent on other people, right? And that's okay. It's okay. More so as we reach later years of life. So anyway, so Becky, I was telling her, Chris and I, we bought this condo when we downsized to a 2-bedroom condo a few years back, so it's been almost 10 years now. And we had moved many times in the past, and we remodeled houses, and we had retiled floors, and we had removed wallpaper, and we've done all those things, right? Lots of times. So we moved into this condo, and it needed to be completely redone before we could move in. It was original everything. And so we ripped up all the floors, and we're going to tile. So Chris got an estimate from the tile guy. He came out and gave us an estimate, and I went, I ain't paying that. That's crazy. I can do this myself. We've done it before.
We can do it again.
Do it again. So we went and bought tile and grout and all the things and the grout and the wet saw and the everything. And Chris is outside cutting the tile. I'm laying the grout. I'm on my knees with my little knee pads. I'm laying tile. Did the whole entryway. It looked great. Get around the corner. Get into the powder bath. It's tiny. I'm not tiny. And I'm thinking, how do these tile guys do this? And they get in there, and he's trying to hand me a tile, and I'm trying to maneuver it around the commode. And I am so hot and so tired and so frustrated, and my knees hurt and my head hurt, and I was frustrated, and the tile didn't fit. And I took my trowel, and I threw it out the door. It hit the wall, which now I had to fix because I gouged the wall. And I said, Chris, and he came in, and I said, how much was that estimate? Do you think he'd do it for less now that I've already done the entryway? And he goes, well, I don't know. I can call him. I said, call the guy. That was it. I was done. He came in and in no time flat had that powder bath done, the kitchen and the breakfast area done, and it looked fantastic. And we were happy to write the check, right? And that was it. I told him, I said, that's it. No more. I am no longer tiling. I don't want to do wallpaper either. It's painful for months after. There's just certain things we don't do. But I think what happened in my mind, and I know you can relate to this, I felt 25 again, right? Like as long as I wasn't on my knees with knee pads on, I felt 25 again. But when I got in there and tried to do it after 25 years, it was harder than I expected.
Yeah, and let's be real, like we can be frustrated about that. Like that's frustrating. That's frustrating to feel in your mind that you can do something.
That our body doesn't keep up with it.
Yeah. So the truth is that as we age, we often need more support and not less. Yeah. So just recognizing that.
Well, and I love your pro tip on this because it really is about being realistic and honest with yourself and with others.
Yeah. So our pro tip is we may feel like we should be able to do it all on our own because we did it before, but I found that people who are really honest with themselves and honestly, also with their loved ones and with the people around them, they oftentimes reach their goals much more effectively than if they tried to do it themselves.
Well, and I think, when we talk about simplifying the move, if you ask people who are capable of helping you to help you sooner than later, they're often really happy to do that. They're not usually happy to help you when you call them and say, I'm doing this next week, can you come over and back my house, right? So when there's a runway, right, when there's time for people to plan and coordinate and make it happen, then usually most people have at least somebody in their life that can help do that, or they can hire help, right, of course. Okay, so back to that picture real quick. So just to remind you, I think, be honest with yourself. We had a guy that moved a few years back to Spanish Cove, actually, and lovely couple, met with them. They decided not to use move management services, and ultimately not our services at all, but we kind of followed them because I was concerned after the consult that they said they were going to do a lot of things themselves, and they basically had some massive, huge artwork, beautiful artwork, that he basically took it down himself, created it himself, moved it himself, and then ended up having bad back problems for months afterwards and could not fully enjoy the lifestyle that he had just moved to. Mm-hmm. And so he was, held up, and I'm like, dude, and it wasn't money. That was the frustrating part. It's like they had the money. He just was stubborn. Mm-hmm. And and I'm stubborn too, so I get it. But I thought, you know what, all of that mess, when you could have just had somebody for one day come in and do that. I'm going to tell you about Helen real quick, then we'll move to the next one. This is Helen. She moved to Concordia when she was 97. And actually, I have a little story about her if you want to hear her whole story. It's back there on the table with our Buckley Realty Group and Seder Real Estate Group tags. Miss Helen was 97. She moved to Concordia. That's where she is on the right. On the left, she's standing there in her house before she moved. I believe before she moved. That may have been her new apartment. But that little dresser was one of her keepsakes. Somebody had painted that for her, and it was a treasure, right? We wanted to make sure we took good care of that. But her son and daughter-in-law called us to help her. And he was, when he called, he said, this is, he called and said, this is Paul, Helen's son. I went out and met with him, and you know what? In my mind, I thought he was going to be like 25. Well, she's 97. And they're laughing, right? This is what I think, right? Because my son is 34, so her son must be, no, he was almost 70 himself. So, and I'm thinking, well, why doesn't her son just help him? Well, okay. So, and her daughter-in-law just has some knee surgery and all these things, and they're like, we're going to need some help. Mom's going to need some help. And we're going to need somebody to be patient with Mom. Because Mom's going to want to go through everything. And she did. And it was fantastic. And let me tell you something. At 3 o'clock, she would make me stop. And we would sit down and have cantaloupe and Kool-Aid. Every time. And then she would send me home at the end of the day with homemade crack cocaine. I kid you not. It was Chex Mix with sugar coated on it, right? And when you took one bite of it, you could not stop. Oh. And it was in a little baggie, and I would take it home to Chris, and I'd say, I brought you some crack cocaine. Because that's what it's like. You cannot stop eating it. And Helen made it in bundles, and then she gave it out to people. And she continued to do that at Concordia. She passed away right before her 100th birthday. But the reason I bring her up on this particular slide is because she was realistic about her capabilities. She was quite capable, but she could not get up on ladders. She had had some trouble with mobility. And so basically she did the low stuff and I did the high stuff. And she had me move things that were heavy, and I had her do things that she was capable of doing. So what we did is we said, okay, what is she capable of? Because she can do these things, and what is she not? And that's really what I would consider the best practice, right? Like, don't try to take on the things that you can't take on.
Yeah, so before we get to that, I want to do their call to action, if you don't mind.
Yep.
So the things that I want you to take away from our pro tip and our myth number 2 are, I would like for you to take mental inventory of what is important for you to do yourself and what things you can let go and get some help with. And then I want you to think about who you need to communicate that with. Who do you need to have an honest conversation with about these are the things that I can do, these are the things that I can't do, and just really open up those conversations sooner than later.
And I think be honest with your spouse. If you're married
Yes.
in the room and your spouse thinks you can do things that you really don't feel capable of doing, be honest about that, and vice versa. If your spouse shouldn't be doing things that they think they're capable of doing, have an honest conversation about that. Because the last thing you want, and this we've seen this happen more times than I care to mention, is someone will inevitably try to do things and they'll end up falling out of an attic, falling through an attic, dropping a box on their toe, dropping a pitcher out of a shelf on their toe or on their hand or something, and breaking something or ending up being injured or exhausted and tired and so. And that's not because these aren't capable people, it's just because this is a high stress thing.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah, can I tell you a quick story? And that you will laugh because this is an exaggeration, but it's true. So I had a client who we got his inspection report back, and there was a little bit of an issue on the roof. And I drove by, and he was on the roof, 80 years old, on the roof, because in his mind he didn't feel 80, did he? He didn't feel 80. So I called his wife and I said, okay, so we're gonna have a conversation about this. I have to legally I have to give you information. But if you are going to get on the roof, then that means maybe I can't work for you anymore because I have to give you the information.
Right.
And I can't make you stay off the roof. So I'm going to need the two of you to work together.
Yeah.
And I will tattle on you if I see you on the roof again. So we do feel younger than we are, and that's, I love that.
But because the solution for that was easy. I mean, you have people that can get on the roof.
Yes.
For free.
Yes.
Look around.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. But he was going to get on there and fix that. So just be honest with yourself about your capabilities.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I can do myth number 3.
All right. Perfect.
Okay, myth number 3, the moving process happens all at once. That actually, I talk to people who believe that. I'm not ready for that yet.
Right.
I don't want to get started on that yet.
Right.
It is not a day process, is it?
No, but then they'll call you the week before and say, okay, we're ready. Okay,
Yeah.
great. When would you like to do it? Next Friday work for you? No, it doesn't work for anybody that you're going to meet.
Or better yet, I think I'd like to have an estate sale next week.
Right.
And we're like,
Yeah. No, this takes time to set up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, the thought process might happen overnight. You may make a decision overnight, but the process takes longer. And like we said, there is a pattern. So let me put that back up again. So in this planning phase, thinking and planning, they all overlap, right, somewhat. So when you're in thinking, you're also probably in planning. When you're in planning, you're also taking some action. So taking action means, like, let's say some of you go, well, you know what, I am going to move in a couple of years, so I'm going to start donating some things. Well, that's taking action. But you're also planning for what that move's going to look like at the same time, right? So you see where I'm going with that? So you're doing both. And so the challenge that I have, and this is where we want to give you some tips and best practices, is there are some people who start doing things without a plan, and then when we start to meet with them about a plan, we find out that we're doing things we wish they hadn't done.
yeah. Yeah.
And then they are going to wish they hadn't done. And
Yeah.
sometimes they're costly, and sometimes it causes things to make the time frame different, and sometimes it is actually a detriment to your process. So we would rather have that plan in place, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And a really easy, tangible thing I would say is and we've talked about this in previous sessions, and I would definitely go back and listen, but sometimes we don't always know the biggest bang for your buck on like getting your house ready to go on the market. And so I will come in and money will have been spent on something that doesn't move the needle, right? So there's lots of different times to have those conversations.
Specifically, I'm sure you have a ton of specifics. This one client, I just remember her. She was so sweet, and I hated having to tell her this. That she had said, I want you to come out. I just put new carpet in the house, and I want to put it on the market, and I know that it needed new carpet, so I went ahead and did it. Right. So I get out there, and I walk in, and we walk into the step-down den, and she had beautiful, brand new, plush, emerald green carpet. And there's nothing wrong with emerald green carpet. It's beautiful, and it matched everything in her house. It looked lovely. But that was not what was trending during the time frame we were going to put it on the market, right? That's not what new buyers were looking for. It worked great for her, but that's what she had before, and so she went back with her favorite color. And that was so painful because, well, first of all, I walked in and I said, oh, you said you put new carpet in. Which room did you put it in? And she said, well, this one. And I went, well, of course you did. It's lovely. Right? Because in my mind, I thought, surely nobody put new emerald green carpet in to sell their home. We would have put in some sort of real basic grayish, light color, cut pile, something, right? She would have hated it. But there's a reason that we plan ahead.
We plan ahead, have the conversations. It doesn't have to happen. It shouldn't happen in a short time frame, because then you're making decisions feeling backed into a corner, which is not good for anybody. And we have lots of resources for people to slow down and, recognize that decision fatigue. Downsizers Club is really great. A great resource.
Decision fatigue. Okay. I think this is a good place to talk about that.
Let's do it.
Do you ever, you and Roberto have to have the same conversation we have. So you got kids and you're busy, you both have lives and businesses. Is there ever a time when he says to you, what are we doing for dinner? Or he asks you, what would you like to do for dinner? And you go, I don't care, you decide.
Yeah. You know what I normally say?
Yes.
Yeah, I usually say he says, oh, just choose. And I'm like, listen, if I have an opinion about something, you will always know it. Always. My opinion is never a secret. So if I say I don't care what's for dinner, I really don't care what's for dinner. And I also think that it would have been a really nice heads up when I was, in my early 20s getting married, that someone would have told me that it was my responsibility to figure out what's for dinner for the entirety of my life. Pro tip.
Okay, so here's the deal. That's decision fatigue.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, when you are so exhausted and someone asks you a question as simple as, what would you like for dinner, and you want to eat their head off, that is decision fatigue. Now imagine you're moving, or you're thinking about moving, and you're thinking about what you're going to take out of your closet, what in your kitchen are you going to use, who's going to take mom's china, what am I going to do with the stuff in the garage, I have one car I need to sell, I have a house I need to sell, I have a mover to call, I have a house that needs to be liquidated, I need to go over to my senior community or my house and sign the lease, and I need to get new insurance, I need to change my utilities. Are y'all getting my drift?
Yeah.
And also what's for dinner.
And what's for dinner? Okay, so that, when you are trying to make all those decisions, and then you layer on top of the decision itself, how many pages is the real estate contract now?
7.
7 pages. And the disclosure?
4.
4. And the other disclosures?
I mean, you're probably signing 20 pieces of paper.
Okay, so 20 pieces of paper that you have not ever read, presuming that you haven't done your homework, because these are all new in the last few years. And then you're going, and say you're moving to one of the communities, you're going to sign their contract, which is going to be equally complex and difficult to read and understand. And then let's say you are doing utilities. By the way, all that's done online now. And I don't know about y'all, there's a learning curve every single time I have to do something online. Right? So there are things that you're having to process. And inevitably, Becky, has anybody ever said this to you? You say, okay, here's the contract. I'm going to go over this with you so that you can sign it. And they go, I trust you.
Yes, just tell me where to sign.
Because they're so exhausted that they don't have the bandwidth to have you explain the contract. That's scary. That's scary to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because you're signing a contract on one of the largest assets in your life, and then what happens is this next 30 to 45 day process goes by, and you go, well, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't tell me that. Well, nobody told me that. Well, they may have told you or may not have told you, but guess what? When you've got decision fatigue, you're not hearing it all. You cannot hear it all.
Yeah.
And then you got Roberto back there. How many people have said to me, oh, we're moving, and by the way, this is when we decided to go ahead and do our estate plan. Really? Like, how many more legal contracts do you want to deal with at the same time? Like, really? So, yeah, so decision fatigue is a real thing.
Yeah.
And so can you break it down into bite-sized meals?
Yeah, and I would say if you can, we recommend, because a lot of times when you know that it's time to actually make a move, we get the call, like everybody thinks about their current house first. And so we will get a call and I'll say, okay, so where are you going? Oh, I don't know. I just need to sell my house and then I'll figure that out. Because they think, well, every move, these topics, these myths are building blocks, right? Every move is the same.
Right.
I've done it before. Yeah, all of these things that we're thinking about. But in reality, a contract, if I get your house under contract, you got 5 weeks. Can you move out of your house? Can you find a community that has an opening?
Yeah.
And
that's acceptable.
Right. So all of these timelines, your call to action on this that I have is, where are you in this process? On our gradient scale that we have there. Where is your spouse? If you have children, I know we have a lot of, and I want to shout out our people in the room who are single with no children, because they are such good planners. They're such good planners. They ask good questions. A lot of times when we have children, it's almost a handicap, right? When kids will take care of that, or we'll figure that out. We'll talk about it at Thanksgiving. And so, just thinking about where are you, is your spouse, and have you told your kids?
Yeah. And so the call to action, as I understand it, is for them to
name your place.
Name where you are in the phases. Yeah. And if you're in 2, if you're kind of teetering on 2, then write down 2 for yourself so you know where you are. I want to tell a quick story, Becky, before we move on. This is an interesting couple, and I've shared with you before about them, the Lads. They live at Spanish Cove. They moved to Spanish Cove many, many years ago, long before I knew them, and they lived there, I think, some 20 years, when they moved from independent living from another independent 3-bedroom apartment into assisted living. And they had planned. They knew when they moved to a continuing care retirement community that had all levels of care, they knew they would eventually possibly need a higher level of care. So they, like Helen, moved knowing ahead of time, and they moved into assisted living. Well, when they moved into assisted living, they had to downsize a lot, from 3 bedrooms into 1 bedroom. And love them. Look, that's their apartment on the right. By the way, that is a long-term care community apartment. That is their office. They had 2 chairs, 2 desks, 2 computers. They still were operating. They write books. They've published like 40 some odd books on genealogy stuff. He's a retired academic from SNU. He's a professor. She ran a library, so they're very into their books. They planned all these things out, and they knew they were going to have to do it, but it still wasn't easy. Let's be honest. Letting go of things that matter to you is still not easy, no matter what level of life or stage of life you're in. Now, they're now into their 90s, and amazing people, fantastic people, still living at Spanish Cove in a higher level of care there. But I will tell you that they planned, and they worked with their daughter on their planning. Their daughter is kind of like the point person. They've given her not authority to make decisions really, but to kind of be the spokesperson for them. And most recently, they reached out and asked, when they moved, they put a lot of stuff in storage because they just could not quite part with it. And so now the next phase of their moving isn't into a new community or a new apartment or anything. It's liquidating their storage. And so the daughter reached out and said, Mom and Dad are ready to start downsizing their storage. And that may be because the daughter's ready for them to start downsizing their storage. But she doesn't want to have to make those decisions. Those are hard decisions to make for somebody else, right?
They are, but I think also with the planning, and this is something that happens, I think, more than a lot of people realize, is when you start with a plan and you know where, I have some clients that they had a health event occur. They really hadn't been planning very much. They found a place, they needed a place to go. So they made a decision, moved in. It wasn't a good fit for them because they hadn't visited several communities. Wasn't a good fit for them. So then they had to pay to move again.
Yep.
And it was still not a great fit for them. To date, they have moved 4 times. And that is very expensive. It's very expensive because you're, and you know, sometimes you move to the right place, but you don't plan well on what you're taking. And so then you're moving the china cabinet that makes it where you can't have your couch. And then you're paying to move the china cabinet again. So being honest with yourself and planning ahead and looking at those floor plans, all of those things cannot be done overnight. So thinking about where you are, being honest with yourself, and knowing that there are some expenses involved, I just think it's so smart.
There's always going to be expenses involved.
Sure, of course, of course.
Okay, so myth number 4?
Myth number 4, my family members and my friends are the best people to help me move. Because you can just like buy them some pizza. Buy them some pizza after they move the stuff, it'll be fine.
Yeah. Well, that ship is sailing. Even my friends these days don't work for pizza anymore, right? I have one friend, Chris and I have one really good friend who has back problems. And Chris has back problems too. And so nowadays when we say, hey, will you help? He doesn't even let us finish the sentence. He goes, I'll send some guys over. Because he has a company with some guys with some muscle. And it's like, they don't even try to lift things anymore. Right? It's just not smart.
Yeah.
But yeah, the family members can be tricky. I made a note to myself about a client that we had a few years back that I won't say their names. I'm going to call them the Noble family. Okay? Because I'm going to protect the innocent here. This family, fantastic human beings, wonderful people, moved to an independent living community out of their own. They've lived in 30 some odd years, had a lot of stuff and a lot of memories. They've been missionaries. And so they brought back a lot of things from overseas that were really meaningful to them. And I wrote down, for this family, kids equal chaos, equal more expense, equal emotional and financial turmoil. Because that move was a mess. And it was because they felt like their kids needed to be involved. And frankly, if their kids would have stayed in their respective states, and we could have gotten them moved to their new place, and the kids could have come in afterward and dealt with, picking out the things they wanted or whatever afterward, everyone would have won on that. It would have been a bit, even the kids, because the kids, admittedly, they didn't get along with each other. And so because they didn't get along with each other, mom and dad played favorites. Well, they really, did they or didn't they? I don't know. I'm not in their family. But it was just such stress that every time we talked to them, they were under such stress. And I thought, and I asked her at one point, why didn't you just let your kids know that you have help? Like, you've got people that you hired. And she said, well, we just thought that kids should be involved. And I'm like, okay, so here's your lesson. They do not have to be involved. They are your kids. You decide if you want them involved or not. If they are great and they're wonderful and they get along and all those things, then fantastic. But I don't know who made the rule that your kids have to be involved in your move or your life under any circumstance.
Well, and have you noticed also that when someone is helping you with something, a lot of times they're busy. They have their own lives, kid or not, friend, right. Colleague. You wait on them because they've said that they're going to help you with something, yep. And they say, well, I'll come next weekend. Yep. Well, that weekend gets busy for them, so they don't come that weekend, and you're still waiting, or someone gets sick, and that's you just spend a lot of time, and that creates some frustration.
Changes the timeline too.
We have a client who actually her children wanted to help, really wanted to help, and she didn't really want them to help. And so that is why they hired our move coordination, because she said, they're going to come try and help, and I'm you talking to my move coordinator, you are going to tell them that you have it under control.
Yeah, yeah, that's their job,
Yeah,
right? To keep
yeah,
my kids out of this.
yeah.
Well, Judy, years ago, when we moved her from her home in Edmond, she moved into a little garden home over in the village. And I'll never forget the day I went over, I had a bunch of boxes, and I don't know why I was assigned to be the person to bring the boxes, but I brought the boxes over, and I'm putting tape on the boxes, setting them up for her, because she wanted to pack her books herself. Fantastic. Very capable lady. And her husband had passed away several years before. She had kids, fantastic kids, all very accomplished, all living in different states. Her daughter used to be or was a realtor up in Kansas. Her son was a judge. I forget what the other son did. But I hear her in the bathroom on the phone when I'm doing this in the living room, and just not really hearing the conversation. But as she came into the living room, I stopped taping because it was noisy, and I heard her say, "No, you don't need to come down here. I've got people." And I just stopped, and I just smiled, and she said, "I gotta go," and she hung up, and I said, "What's going on?" And she said, "That was my son, the judge." And I had left him a message and told him what I was doing, but he doesn't listen to his messages. And so he got the message, and he called me, and he said, "Mom, I don't have the time to come down there right now and help you." And she said, "Well, I didn't ask you to. And I really don't need your help. I've got it under control." But he didn't believe her. And so she did have people, right? She had made arrangements, and we had it all under control. She got moved. She bought a house. We sold her house. Her kids never even had to come in town. And when I asked her later, I said, is there anything you want us to share with your kids? And she said, "No." She said, "I've got this. And if there is anything that they need, I'll send it to them." But she said, "No, I think I'm going to do this." There was a sense of empowerment for her because she knew her kids were busy. And they were very capable, and they would have helped her, but they were very busy. And in a way, she was trying to give them the gift of not being a bother. But because they felt a sense of obligation, they felt guilty that they couldn't be there to help her, right? There was that weird dynamic.
Yeah.
And that's why I say, you've got to have those conversations. That's why number 2, I think it was.
That's exactly what I was going to say, because I'm not saying don't let your children help you, but maybe ask them what's important for them to help you with. We've got a client right now that she wants, there are certain things that she enjoys doing with her daughter. And there are some things that she does not want her daughter to do. She said, I think she said, "My daughter really she's very good at decorating, and her things are so beautiful." And she's like complimenting her and all of those things. And she said, "But it's not my style." And so she doesn't want her daughter to come in and decorate the apartment. But there are a few things that she wants to do with her. So if you have those conversations and you're honest with people about, this would be a good thing for us to do, but let's do this. And also, just to be very honest, like you said before, if you're downsizing, likely your children are not in their 30s.
Right. And give them assignments. I love the fact that she knows what the daughter's gave to dad and what she wants her to do. This was a house that we helped someone move to Bradford Village up in Edmond, and beautiful lady moved off of an acreage, and this was the wall in her new place that was replicated from the wall in her previous place. And this was a very important memoir wall of her family pictures and everything. She had, one side of the family on one side of the family on the other side. It was all in order. We took a picture of it, right? The move management team took a picture of it. Well, so the reason I put it up here is because, similar to your story, I said, "Is there anything that you want us to do or not do?" Right? And she said, "Well, she said, I want you to pack up all those pictures." And she said, "I want to know kind of what the order is." So we made sure that she had the pictures. She said, "But I'd love for my daughter to be able to help me with that. She doesn't have a lot of time, but we can do that on a weekend. And that way we can go through and look at the pictures together, and I can tell her the story about the pictures as we put them up." And her daughter was absolutely a lovely human, and she was so grateful for that. Well, so the daughter came over one day on the left-hand side where the boxes are, the picture of the boxes. The daughter came over one day, and while we were unpacking her and getting her all situated, and she thanked her mother for not asking her to do that part of it. Because she was looking around at all the boxes, like there were massive numbers of boxes because she had a lot of breakables. And so, you know, those boxes, something has to happen with boxes. So let me just point this out real quick. You pack things in the boxes, and then you unpack the boxes. What happens to the boxes after you unpack the boxes? Yeah, they have to be broken down and discarded somehow, gotten rid of.
Recycled, given away.
It is harder than you think to get rid of boxes. I know, right? And so, anyway, of course, we have a process for that, and your team has a process for that. But those are wardrobe boxes. So, wardrobe boxes are the single most dangerous safety risk that I can think of in a move process. Because what happens is, if you've ever seen them, when you set them up and you put them together, they have these flaps that flop out, right? And then there's like 3 of them before, and they flop out, and inevitably somebody trips on those, bumps into those, gets a skin, like a
cut. Yeah, you can cut yourself on them.
Cut, painful, inevitably. The other thing that happens is when people are trying to break them down, they're so unwieldy and awkward that somebody ends up falling. And
so on that point, let's talk about, here's your pro tip.
Yep.
Get the right help at the right time. So let's talk about the right help real quick. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but I do want you to know kind of some different people that you could call, because there's a lot of resources that you have that you may not know about. So obviously, you know, real estate agent is the first person that you call. But did you know that there are move managers? I know that that's something that people in this group have talked about a lot, but you may not know what they do. So a move manager is like a wedding coordinator, right? So like when you're getting married, the bride and the mother of the bride are not out there baking the cake. Or maybe they do, but I don't suggest it. But making the flower arrangements, all of those things. There is a person that buffers the bride and her mama, right? There's a person that when a decision has to be made, they're not going to ask the bride that question because she's having her day.
She has decision fatigue.
Yeah, she has decision fatigue and she is trying to enjoy her day. So a move coordinator is like that for your move. They are the one that answers the questions and make sure that things are going smoothly, make sure that things just happen magically.
The mover shows up on time and the boxes.
They know what to do, they know what's being packed, all of those things. So that's what a move manager does. Packers are literally just packing. And I have to tell you what happened to me when we moved. We had movers move us. Roberto had a job transfer, and we moved to Tulsa from Oklahoma City. And the movers came and knew kind of what the packers came. They knew kind of what they were going to do. We went to unpack in Tulsa. They had packed a trash can full of trash. Yeah. They are not decision makers. They're not decision makers. You have to stand there and say, oh, please don't pack that till I take the trash out. Okay? Other people who might be involved might be an organizer. That might be someone who you could have help you as well. So lots of resources. And then also knowing what not to expect. So setting expectations is the key, or having realistic expectations is the key to not being constantly frustrated during your move. So on that note, the packer is not the one who's going to make those decisions, right? The mover is not the one that's going to make those decisions. You have to have made those decisions beforehand. Do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's great. No, that's great.
Okay. So your call to action here is, what about your move might be unique to just your situation? What parts of your life and your lifestyle and your needs might need a special person that you need to think about and line up?
Like a point person.
A point person, yes. Yep.
Yeah, and you know, I might add to the point person thing. There are people you tell about what you're doing, and then there are people that you don't tell about what you're doing. I mean, when you're in thinking and planning mode, the only people that need to be looped in are your key advisors. And I'm going to tell you who the people are that are not your key advisors. Ready, ladies? Your hairstylist, your nail technician, your Sunday school group. Let's see. Your neighbors.
I mean, it could be family members that
And
maybe
some family members.
maybe somebody who always has an opinion
Yeah.
about something, but maybe it's not exactly what you want to happen.
Yeah.
Your spouse probably you need to talk
Your
to them.
spouse may need to know. Yeah. And you may have selective kids that know in the beginning and then not some others until later. I'm just saying because I think what happens, I've seen people tell people in good conscience, oh, we're going to move in a year or two, and then they're inundated with phone calls from people saying, oh, you're going to sell your house? Oh, are you going to sell your stuff? Oh, do you have an RV for sale? Oh, and all of a sudden you become a target for people who see you as a potential mark. And so I'm just telling you, if you're, and this isn't ageist, this is just reality. If you are over the age of 65 and you have a home to sell, there are people out there targeting you. And the goal is for them to be able to buy your house for less than it's worth. And so I'm just telling you straight up, you tell and I love my stylist, but she tells me everything, which means she tells everybody everything. So you tell her you're going to sell your house, you're going to tell 5 other people who are going to eventually figure out who you are, and you're going to start getting more postcards than you already get. But I'm just saying, just be aware of who you tell.
Well, my thought went a little bit different too, because, sometimes when you share things with people who have negative experiences, that's the first thing they're going to share with you. And it may make you second guess something that you know that you need to do.
Oh my gosh, people all the time, you're going to move where?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? Old people live there. I mean, inevitably somebody's going to say that to you when you move to a senior living community. Even though it's the nicest senior living community around and there are plenty of younger people there, if that's somebody's perception, they're going to say that, and then you go back and you say to yourself, gosh, did I make a good decision?
Yeah. So think about the people that you need in your corner, and like Nikki said, the people who maybe you don't. So myth number 5.
Oh, I'm not going to tell a story about this, but these pictures just represent a few of the kind of representative of what people are doing during that process.
Yeah.
Wrapping china, for instance. Yeah. All right.
Okay, myth number 5. Everything will go just as planned.
You heard her say that's a myth, right?
That's a myth. Even the best laid plans have to be adapted along the way. Amy, who helps us put on this, she's in the process of helping her in-laws downsize. And I'm not sure if you've noticed that she's wearing a boot today. She's wearing a boot today because a washing machine dropped on her foot. She didn't plan to do that, shocker. She didn't plan to have that happen over the weekend right before Senior Living Truth Series. But things do not always go as planned, and flexibility is your friend. And if you have help and you're not trying to do things by yourself, then that's great.
Well, so we're going to talk about some common pitfalls.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Washing machine on the foot was not on my list.
I didn't have it
but
either.
But it could be one.
I should have put it.
Yeah. So we can talk about a few of these. These are basically things to have you think about so that you can plan ahead to avoid them, right? And
Yeah.
there's a bunch, but we're going to name some of the most common ones, right? And then we'll take some questions. But one would be when you don't have a plan, you don't budget correctly. So what happens is everything seems more expensive than it should be because all of it's happening all at one time. Right? Oh my gosh, the movers. Oh my gosh, the move manager. Oh my gosh, the utilities. Oh my gosh, my lease at the new community. Oh my gosh, this. Oh my gosh, that. And yes, I think I'm in the oh my gosh phase because yesterday we took Kate to the park. She's 2. And everything she said about the water spigots was, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
My kids say oh my stars all the time. That's fine.
Okay. So, but making sure you have a plan and that you have done some estimates along the way so that those expenses don't creep up on you and it seems a little overwhelming or you haven't planned accordingly.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, waiting too long and making rushed decisions. We hear all the time people saying, well, your last minute does not constitute an emergency on my part. Movers and packers really take that stance.
Yeah, I think it's your lack of planning does not constitute a crisis on my end, right? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. So making a rush decision is typically more expensive, and we can talk about that in terms of also when, like we were talking about moving several times because you don't do the proper planning for that. Trying to do it alone, and honestly having unrealistic timelines and expectations. I see that a lot. That is a very, very common pitfall, having unrealistic expectations on how long this is going to take.
I'm going to show you a picture of two houses. Okay. The house on the left is a typical house here in Oklahoma City. Some, typical house. It may not be your house, but it's a typical house. The house on the right, let's say, is the house that person is moving into. Okay? Will all of that on the left fit in that on the right? No, the answer is yes, it will. You wouldn't want to live there afterward. But it will, I promise you, we can make it fit. But chances are you wouldn't want it to fit, right? You would be comfortable that way. So when you think about this, what happens in people's minds, and this goes back to what we talked about right at the very beginning, I've done this before. You think, I've done this before. Well, the last time you moved is not like what? This time. Because how many years, by show of hands, how many of you lived in the same home for 20 or more years? Keep your hand up if it's been 30 or more. Keep your hand up if it's been 40 or more. Keep your hand up if it's been 50 or more. Anybody 60 or more?
Wow.
How long? How long?
Well, I moved there in 1962.
1962.
1962.
So somebody do the math for me.
We got one back there.
63
When
years.
did you move into your house?
June of 56. She
Wow.
wins the prize. Sorry. Okay, so have you all accumulated some things in that time frame? And I'm not going to ask this, but some of you haven't gotten rid of anything in that time frame. All right. When you think about that, right, it is a different, not only is your home different and your house different and your stuff different, the world is different.
Mm-hmm.
How movers do things is different. How estate liquidators do things is different. How realtors do things is different. And so you're on a whole new learning curve for this, and so you got to take steps. That's why I love the Downsizers Club, Becky. I think for you guys doing the Downsizers Club, to me, take somebody from, okay, this is what I'm dealing with now, to I need to make that work in a smaller space, in an organized, systematic way. To go from left side to right side takes a little planning. It doesn't happen in a day.
Right, and Downsizers Club, just in case those of you who don't know what it is, it's a smaller group. It is not a lecture. It's a,
It's a support group.
Conversation. It is, yes, it's a support group with actionable items. We have a topic that we talk about every.
Well, what I love is that you're breaking it down. Like, it's not this big elephant you're trying to eat in one bite. You talk about contracts and what do the contracts look like, and you talk about estate liquidations and what does that look like, and what does move-in look like, and people can do that in bite-sized chunks a month at a time. And in this room, we talk in big picture, we talk generalities, right? And for people who are gonna move in the next 3 years?
We tell people, it's 3 to 5 years. It's good to come and start kind of thinking about things and making a plan. Yeah, we love Downsizers Club. So, and then also another big pitfall that I see is assuming the availability of help. Failure to recognize signs of decision fatigue, of grief, and overwhelm as a normal thing. I mean, it's normal. You call it what it is. Have conversations with people.
Yeah, I think if you don't get a little bit emotional, if you've lived in your house for 30 plus years, you don't get a little bit emotional, especially ladies. Not always just ladies, but ladies that tend to get more emotional about leaving homes they raise their kids in. That's okay, that's totally normal. And I think people feel bad about admitting that. So, so the mistake is to not acknowledge the feelings that you're feeling along the way. Because then what happens is they bubble up at a time you don't want them to bubble up, like at the closing table when you're selling your house, or the day of the move when you really want to enjoy some friends that have just come over or whatever. So, being willing to talk about those. But don't you think that underestimating the amount of stuff and what to do with that stuff is a big one.
Yeah, I think, honestly, like, I think that the amount of people that we talk to, and Shannon says this all the time, the amount of people that we talk to that think, I'll just do an estate sale next week. I mean, that is not the way that works. And it's a conversation that we have frequently enough and it shocks me every time. Or finding a community and thinking, I'll just move in next week.
And they've got a waiting list.
And they've got a waiting list. So, timeline expectations. So,
well, hang on. Can we talk about that whole the estate sale thing? Because y'all are going to be doing a big thing on that next month, right?
Yes. So next month, senior seminar, we are talking about what to do with all of the extra stuff. And so please come to that because it's going to be really, really good. You know, and also we're talking about a downsizers club next month too, but the thought that, oh, I'll just donate it. I get that a lot. Don't we get that a lot, Shannon? I'll just donate it. But what you don't realize is in order to donate something, they won't come in your house. So you have to box it up. They won't take everything. There's a lot of things that they won't take. So knowing that ahead of time, if your entire plan hinges on calling some organization, for them to come pick up your things, you probably need to have that conversation beforehand because it's likely not going to be going the way that you think that it will.
Nothing happens fast anymore, unless you don't want it to. I mean, let's be honest, right?
Well, yeah, because once you go under contract on your house, that is a crazy train, and it's going to feel like it's running away.
I will tell you that, let's go back to that slide real quick, because I want to point something out. I think I may have even wrote it in my notes here, yeah. So, okay, on this chart, okay, pre-contemplation is a long process. Most of us don't think about downsizing for a very, very, very long time, and then we start thinking about it. That can happen for a very, very long time, potentially, and planning can vary. Some people plan quickly and they do it quickly. Other people take years to plan. That's just about who you are and where your phase of life is. Okay, but then when you move into action, I can tell you that it does not matter how many days, months, or years you have planned, action phase is going to seem fast. We get evals back, like surveys after somebody sells their house or moves, and we get to send them a survey to say, hey, what did you think? And we'll ask them questions about their move, and they will say, I felt rushed. And I'm thinking, good Lord, we took 3 years. I mean, what do you want from me? Right? I mean, the reason they felt rushed is because of what Becky just said. The minute you put a deadline on something, and that's when you contract on a house. And that's why the 10 steps to downsizing we talked about before is we like people to move first.
Yeah.
Then get rid of what's left. Then sell their house.
Yeah.
And that's the order.
Yeah.
And Becky and them actually have a document that we don't have here today, but if you were to write on your eval, send me the 10 steps, she could send you one, right? In the mail. Because guys, I'm going to tell you, the order you do it matters. And that's part of the plan.
So, I want some time for questions. But so what I'd like to do on this one, your call to action is, what are your non-negotiables? What are you not willing to give on? And set that and be flexible on the rest. Okay, so we're about to do some Q&A. Education partners, if you'll go ahead and go back to your tables, that would be great. And I'm a little scared to step down by myself, so here comes my
look, our
trusty.
Oh, me first. Looky there.
Thanks.
Thank you, Roberta.
Again, if I fall, it's on camera, and I'd rather not do that. Okay, so next steps or Q&A. Do we have where are our mic runners at? Okay.
And you might keep your questions limited to the moving process. If it's about estate liquidation, I would recommend you wait till next month because truthfully, she's going to have some experts up here that really have a handle on that. So anything up to that point, we can pretty much handle,
Yeah. Do we have any questions?
Yep. Oh, statement. Can you hold? Okay, if it's quick. Yeah. Let's have her have mine. Now go ahead. About hairstylists.
About the statement you made about hairstylists, because I have to clarify.
I think I have 4 things that I'm taking to my grave about people.
Oh,
She
is a hairstylist.
Oh, good, yeah.
But I will say that, sometimes people like them to hear it all. And they're the ones, that's why they offer all this information to you without your, maybe desire. But also bartenders.
Bartender's not good to tell either.
People are not going there for the right reason.
Right. Yeah, and so to clarify too, the hairstylist may not be the problem, it may be the 3 other people sitting in the chairs in the room too that are the problem. Yeah, good, thank you. Any other questions on the move process?
Really?
Oh.
Have the list, an ideal list, you're considering downsizing of the moves, the sequence of the moves.
Yes, so go ahead and write on your form, send me the 10 steps to downsizing, and we'll get that over to you.
Maybe the 10 steps we definitely should have too. I think let's also give you some categories real quick. If you're not downsizing soon, like you're gonna be a ways out, there are only a few things that you really need to focus on. Would you like to have what those are real quick? Okay, your spices. If you have a spice pantry or rack that's got spice older than your kids, it's time to go ahead and clear those out, right? Under your bathroom sink, old cosmetics, old lotions, old potions, all that stuff, right? That stuff can go because the estate sale person's probably not going to sell those, right? Unless they're collectibles or something. And then your closets. Most estate sale people will tell you that clothing isn't easy to sell unless you have costumes and beautiful ball gowns and maybe some things for drama and theater, things like that. But typically our everyday clothing, ladies, especially if you have 3 sizes bigger than you and 3 sizes smaller than you, it's okay to just keep the 1 size smaller and the 1 size bigger and get rid of the rest of them. But those are things you can do immediately, right away. Garages is the other thing. If you have a garage full of things that have tubs and you don't really know what's in them, it's time. But just keep in mind, the more you give away or donate early in the process, if you think you're going to have an estate sale, you may not be able to have an estate sale if you don't have enough to sell. So that's why the plan matters. If you meet with somebody that knows what they're doing, they can tell you that if you're going to have an estate sale, guess what? You don't need to do anything in your house. Just live here, enjoy it. And in 3 years, you'll move out and we'll just sell what's left. And you'll go, really? Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah, so the steps are different. That's the reason I pointed that out. The steps are different for every single person, depending on what you're doing.
Okay, yes?
Roughly.
Wait, let's wait for the mic. Not that I can't hear you, but I want it to pick it up on the video for the people who watch the playback.
Roughly, how much time should you plan to visit places? And then how much time should you allot for an opening to occur?
That's a great question.
So are you asking how much time per visit or how far in advance are you going to visit places? In advance. So I'm currently visiting senior communities myself. I don't think that there is a too early. I know Corey, who works with me, he's already scoping out who has the best food. So I think that I would say years in advance.
Yeah, I would say to visit and then revisit.
Mm-hmm.
I think the communities, especially all the communities represented here, all the Legends communities, Quail Ridge, Spanish Cove, Concordia, they would all welcome someone.
Belmont Cove. Please visit Belmont Cove.
Yeah. They would all welcome somebody planning. Now, you tell the person when you take the tour of the community and you're setting it up, you say, look, I'm not looking for today, I'm looking for down the road. And they will give you a wonderful experience there. They will show you all the bells and whistles. They'll answer all your questions. And then what I love about it is they will invite you back. And when they're doing open houses and they're doing fun things, they'll invite you. And you should go. Because that's where you figure out whether or not that's the lifestyle you want to live. Because that's when people come out that actually live there and visit with you and talk about their experience there. And if you go back and just visit those places, then you kind of rule out
Yes.
The ones that you don't want.
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. My sweet friend Mary made a great comment the other day. She said, "This is how I know where I don't want to go to," and that is okay. That's okay. You might walk in someplace and you're like, "Good for you, but not for me."
So you know what we're used to in real estate, right? So here's what Corey and people like that work with buyers in real estate do. We give them these things, they go around, they look at houses, and here's what I would tell them. Rate this house on a scale of 1 to 10. Now let's say we have 5 houses to look at. And anything less than a 7, we're just gonna trash that one. So I give them a piece of paper, we go in a house, we look at it, and I would say, okay, what is this one? And they go, well, it's an 8. Well, what would make it a 10? Oh, if it had better carpet, or if it was painted, okay, great, well, let's write that down, hold on to that one. And then we go look at all 5. At the end of the meeting, I'd say, okay, how many do we have left? And they go, well, we have 2. The others were just too low on the scale. They were 6s and under, 7s
Cut
and
them
under,
off.
right? Cut them
Yep.
off, throw them away.
Yep.
Okay, so we got 2. One's an 8, one's a 9. Well, the question is, do you want either one of these? And they go, well, I don't know. I'm confused now because we saw 5. Well, then we should do what?
Damn again.
Go back and see those
Damn
2 again. And then we re-rate them. And then they basically say, well, you know what? I thought this was a 9, but this is really a 7. This one's really an 8. And if we put new carpet in, it'd be a 10. I go, great. Is that the one you want to buy? Yeah. We narrowed it down from 5 to 1 because process of elimination. People don't go out and look at 5 houses and go, I want all 5.
Well, and if a health event occurs, and you guys are troopers, so we're going to wrap it up. But what I will say is, if a health event occurs and you've been visiting, then you have an idea as to what's out there. So.
And if you're on a waiting list,
Yeah.
that's okay too. You can get on all the waiting lists you want. And if you're not ready, when they call you, you know what you just tell them? I'm not ready.
Yeah.
And they'll say, do you want to stay on the list? And you'll say, yeah.
Yes. So here's what I'd like for you to do. Write down on your feedback form. So thank you, Nikki. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to do some housekeeping.